Good morning. Okay. I hope everyone brought their Bible. I'm going to change it up. I want this to go into more seminar, less lecture-y, okay? Okay? You're looking at me like a ghost in it. Okay.
I wasn't here last time, so I didn't have to bring it. I had to bring any of my text.
I'm pretty sure, Dr. Solomon, there's the Tanakh app it's for free. Okay. Okay. We're just going to, sorry, I have this thing. I can't teach when doors are open. Sorry. Okay. So, all right, let's rock and roll. Okay, so for New Testament writers, and I want to say contemporary believing Christians, the question is, what do the prophets represent? And so we have to reframe biblical prophets because without, I'm going to say the Old Testament, there's no New Testament. I mean, when you think about it, so I mean, it's just the way it works. Okay. Your Honor? Okay. We rise? No? Okay. So, we have to reframe it. And so for any Christian writer, any New Testament writer, without the old, there's no new. And so that leads me to my first question. When rabbis had to come up with the oral law, which is the Talmud, so it's Mishnah plus Gemara equals Talmud, so rabbinic law, they relied upon the Torah and some of the prophets and the writings. But why do you think, let's just start gospel writers, why do you think gospel writers needed the Old Testament? I heard somewhat. Okay, well, yeah. Okay, he's valid. Okay, what else? Anyone else? Okay. Okay. So I'll say that I like to I like to own Matthew and Luke especially. Okay? To a certain extent, Mark. John's a little bit different, but at first, Paul needed the Old Testament, and he needed to do the Abraham. It was a circumcision of the heart versus the flesh, though he himself was a little bit lighter on his eighth day. You guys didn't catch that joke? Okay, but let me ask you a question. For you guys, and I want you to be as honest as humanly, I know this is recorded, but does the Old Testament matter? But hold on. How and why? Okay. Well, it took a while for us to become a monotheistic religion, and then there's little things with like Christology and Jesus. So kind of okay, but really, I respect that. What else? Okay. But did Paul really need that when he went off? Because he first went to the Jews, and the Jews were like, no thanks, we've been down this road before. But then he takes his mission to the Gentiles. And they're not Gentiles as described today. They're pagans. They're different. Not different bad, but just not Jews. And the message is faith over ritual and law. So does the Old Testament matter spiritually, theologically? Does it matter legally to you as believing Christians? I don't know what the rules regarding the presbytery. I mean, your Shabbat is Sunday. It's clearly different than what it says in the Old Testament. So that's a on the seventh day, God rested. We're not resting, okay? Okay? Okay, but no, not only that, we had the Protestant Reformation, but you had the parting of the ways with the Church Father because they had to separate a distinct identity. Okay, so I'm going to assume we don't keep kosher. We don't glean our fields on the seventh year. I mean, maybe Seventh-day Adventists do to a certain extent. But biblical law, and you guys, let me ask you a question. In the Presbyterian Church, is it required to remove your foreskin on the 8th day? How come? Okay. All right, that's like a big one. Do you know, I always get on Yom Kippur, if there's a circumcision. The circumcision has to be done in Yom Kippur. It's a little bit complicated. You have to do in the afternoon before the afternoon service in Yom Kippur, but it has to be done on the 8th day. I'm trying to think what else. Do you guys don't look at my Judaism. I'm saying I'm an ultra-Orthodox Jew, okay? 613, those are the Maimonides command. The positive prescriptions, what you're supposed to do. There's do and don't do, okay? You got funny when you teach rabbinical students, what is a prescription versus what is a proscription? So we have to teach them, what does a doctor prescribe you, okay? If only it was a commandment for God to say we take Ambien whenever we want. Okay. Which ones?
Well, don't murder, don't steal. Those are some sort of Western ethos, independent sort of religion. So,
Okay, yeah.
the reason, those were probably largely banned in some cultures beyond
The laws of Hammurabi, yeah, don't murder, yeah, okay.
So,
If you,
actually, those were,
okay. What else? Anything? There's tons more. Okay. So we relied upon Paul, who had when he was Saul, he had his conversion. And we're going to assume that during this encounter that he was imbued with theological influence to say, that Jesus came and he fulfilled the mitzvahs, even though Matthew says something different. I'm trying to think what else. So are you guys, it says in the Old Testament that we're supposed to, we celebrate the Sukkoth, as it says, the Old English, the Sukkot Harvest Festival for 7 days. You guys doing that one? Okay. The New Year. Okay, so it becomes, I can make an argument that it's not, I don't like the idea of cafeterianism. It's that we need Scripture when we need it, and the rabbis do it all the time. Believe me, they do it all the time. But I think the Old Testament matters as a foundation of genealogy, and to ensure that Jesus still has substantial Jewish authentic roots, and on top of that, those substantial authentic Jewish roots also come from what we consider Israelite Hebrew prophets. Because without that, I don't want to say the word it's a hard sell. It's hard to get more believers. And that's why I've always found it fascinating how contemporary Christians understand the Old Testament. And that's something that, I can make a joke, I wish Jews read the Old Testament more, but that's beside the point. Okay. But it's fascinating when we think about it. It's there as a corpus, but a corpus only for, I want to say, authenticity, to assume X, Y, and Z. And so that's where we're going to go. So last time, I'm trying to think. I don't like reading, we have to see Jesus within the Old Testament. Okay? It's, and if you look at contemporary, I don't want to say the word evangelical, but those who believe that end times or eschatology is upon the horizon, there's been a lot of bad things that's happened since, 2,000 years ago. I don't know what eschatological, movement it would be. The bubonic plague was pretty bad, but you You thought that would be the anyways, all right. And so the first one we talked about is from Deuteronomy 18, that I will raise up another prophet, and this prophet is going to be the main person, okay? And then we're going to go to, everyone go to, oh, we talked about this, Amos. Okay, Amos Famous Cookies. Okay. I hate your festivals, so we can say we hate Sukkah, we hate Passover. As full disclosure, I hate Passover. Did I tell you why? The amount of, ask Marty Solomon, the amount of laws that you can't do on Passover, you just can't eat practically. Okay, it's not only that, the dishes. If you can't buy anything that was made before Passover, it's just awful. Okay. What was that? It's just so, it's very, okay, so he's not rocking the Passover, even though the Passover Seder wasn't invented to way later, but even when you're in Israel during Passover, you go to the gas station, like all the candy bars are like blocked off. Okay. But the problem, here's the thing. If you Pesach, you can't eat those if those were made before, the laws are all but impossible. Okay. Okay, the sacrifices. I saw like an AI, like it's remarkable what they come up with. What the high priest would look like on the day of Yom Kippur with the two goats, Azazel, and then he goes into the Holy of Holies and he does one of the offerings. It's just, as we say, muchar bizarro, okay? Okay, and no liturgical, prayers. So, do you think a good foundation for what's next? Meaning, is this a good enough reframing of prophecy to say that Amos is saying observing the festivals is irrelevant now because we Jews we constantly screw up idolatry. We don't take care of those who are marginalized, the poor, the widowed. I promise you're not going to get zapped. This is good enough. I mean, I always get mad at Jews who say they don't like the New Testament because in Matthew, when Jesus calls the Jews, you brood of vipers, or you Pharisee, but all the not the hypocrites. I'm like, that's what I call it, Jew on Jew tension. Okay, believe me, it's worse today than it was in the first century. Okay, especially with the rise of anti-Zionistic rabbis. But there's always Jew on Jew tension. It's kind of the nature. We never get it. Okay. It's interesting because synagogue is a Greek word. It means gathering place. Yeah, so we associate, look, the word temple was, rose in the 19th century German-speaking lands with the rise of Reform Judaism because temple sounded more, I want to say, Christian-friendly versus synagogue, more part of the, like the New Berlin Synagogue and Oranienburger Strasse. Some have synagogue, but maybe. Anyone else? Go for it. Is it a good starting point? Is it a good starting point for Christianity or for Christian believers? That you read this and they're like, oh, okay, like. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to Amos Famous Cookies. I'm funny, guys. Come on. I've had my wife for, she's been gone for a couple days. She had a 40th birthday, went to the Mission game. I've had the twins. It's been an interesting morning. Teddy finally learned how to stand up and missed all over the place. It's been, and happened to do it in my bathroom, so it's been a great morning, okay? Okay, so we're going to go to 521, okay? 521. Okay. I'm going to read you what my academic text says. 21 to 24, 21 to 25, I forget. Oh, did I include 25? No, okay. Do not offer your sacrifice as an oblation to me, those 40 years in the house of Israel, with a question mark. Okay, here we go. The text does not state that sacrifices or any other cultic rituals are wrong per se, but rather those brought by people who believe in a manner offensive, who are unacceptable to God. So that's the first Jewish glean from this. Who is the person who gave, in the Yiddish the word is drek, a drek, not good offering to God? Okay, what did Abel bring? Cain killed Abel, which is now a popular name among naming kids, which is fascinating. Okay. What? Okay, and what? Yeah, so what did Abel bring? He brought the real. He dropped the Rolex right away for God, right? Okay. Cain dropped the Timex. I'm just kidding. No offense to Timex. Okay. So, and God said, this is kind of like the foundation for us, like good Western values, meaning, okay, not everybody wins, okay? And on top of that, the idea of merit, and merit with kavanah, merit with intentionality. Merit with intentionality means that I'm going to work hard, I'm going to think what's best, and I'm going to take my chances. So I'm picking on Dr. Marty Solomon because he's the only one from Temple here and I can. So when Dr. Marty Solomon applied to medical school, where'd you go, UAB? Okay, he had to take something called the MCATs, okay? In addition to that, he had to have some type of medical resume. He had to be interviewed. And after he took his MCATs and he got into medical school, he had to do an internal medicine and then pulmonary critical care fellowship. Am I getting anything right? Okay. And during this time, he had to interview. And while he was in med school, I'm sure he had to take, he had to take tests. And then when he went to residency, all the different steps, everyone saw what's that show that makes me cringe? Grey's Anatomy, where the guy failed his first. It didn't really happen, right? Okay. So he had to work hard. Okay. Larry over there, he had to write a dissertation on quantum chemistry. I don't know what it's on, but nevertheless, he had to work hard. Where's my judge? You took the bar? Okay. So you had to achieve something in order to get where you're at, right? Okay. So in context to Cain and Abel, Cain thought he could offer, I call this now, the ChatGPT piss poor sacrifice, only to get the trophy, okay? Why do I call it the ChatGPT? Do you guys know how to catch people using ChatGPT? Anyone know? Oh, it's so easy. Every time I get a mailer for donations, or I said I just can't give. It's just intellectually offensive. You want to know what the tell is? Overuse of hyphens. Big hyphens. Okay, and it's just it really. Oh yes, okay, and there's no nuance. There's no bullet points. And sometimes in Judaism, it doesn't really. If you ask for text, it gives you pretty basic quotes from Perkei Avot, which is simple, but it's. The only time I forgot to take a medicine and Rachel wasn't there and I was able, or the twins were sick, I got the weight down and it was right. But other than that, there's way too many hyphens, okay? So if anyone turns into you something which is way too many hyphens, they've ChatGPT'd it, okay? On a side note, if you want to roast your friends, ChatGPT is amazing, by the way. Okay, so this sacrifice was bad. But not bad. I'm not going to say we're bad. It was a C. Or when I worked at USC, I was teaching the undergrad there. I didn't believe in everyone gets an A. This was like such a shanda, okay? Such a shanda. I gave a lot of 86s, 83s to 86s. And, A, B. I think B, what is B? A is excellent, B equals good. C equals satisfactory. D means needs improvement, right? I don't know, whatever it is. C is satisfactory, right? But I gave it 86, like, to show them, forbid. And they would get so, they were so entitled. And I would say to them, okay, I didn't grade on grammar, like split infinitives, pronouns with unclear antecedents. I didn't do that, okay? I'm not that much of a schmuck. But I said, when I was at Vanderbilt at grad school, when I was in rabbinical school, when I do my sermons, I always have an editor. I always worked with the writing tutor. I never think that I can submit something without an editor or a copy editor, okay? And I would say, what is your thesis statement? Now, this is University of Southern California. At one point, I saw a kid that had a button on his back and said, I used to go to UCLA until my dad got a job. I'm like, whoa, okay. So I'd say, what is your thesis statement? And they go, I don't know what you mean. And I'd say, why don't you ask your grandmother if they were to read your paper, what's the one sentence they would walk away with knowing? And they're like, they look at me with his mouth open. Okay. And then the best part is when I would catch people cheating, and there's something called Turnitin software. I'm like, did you cite your work? No, it's all mine. Are you sure? Yeah. Then I would show you her copy and the original, then the scan, and then they break down. But they never gave their effort. It was all crap. They would go like Jewish virtual library on the internet. And I said, for an excellent paper, they go, how do you get an A in a paper? I said, you have to prove your point, and I want to see adjudicated footnotes. I want you to actually go into the library, get some books, okay, and then you have JSTOR. You're able to go on a journal and just spend time researching and show that you have intentionality and merit and hard work writing this paper. I'm not going to Jewish virtual library or Jewish encyclopedia. It's not an academic source. I said, you're in college, okay? I'm not asking you to write a paper for Thanksgiving discussion. And so I felt I was kind that I gave 86s versus destroyed, okay? I remember my first grade, I took Democracy in American College, Alexis de Tocqueville. I got an 80, and I was like so excited, okay? Like, look, I got a B, 80%. I mean, it's not a 70, it's not a C, it's not an A, but it's right at the early stages of good. And I was happy, and I worked my tuchus off, trying to write it. That's the problem what Amos is talking about. Is those, if you engage in rituals or sacrifices that aren't from the kavanah, the soul, the intentionality, the lev, the heart, it's invalid. It's the same reason when I daven, when I pray, I have to pray with focus. I can't pray. There's a whole thing in Judaism that you're not allowed to memorize prayers, okay? And do I have prayers memorized? Yeah. But when I wrap tefillin, okay, every with Shabbos, when I recite Shema, yes, I have that memorized. Do I have the Ve'ahavta and you shall love your God in Hebrew? Yes, I have it memorized. But no, I take the time and I look at the prayer to make sure that I'm doing it with kavanah, okay? My faces, I do all the right things to make sure I'm in the proper mindset. This is all about mindset. So the first read from Amos is that, okay? If anything that's found, and to go back to Cain, it wasn't that good. I mean, he did the bare minimum. I mean, I think he was happy to do it, and then he got so jealous, he offed his brother. Okay? So we're going to keep on going. And then he talks about the wandering. From the perspective of the intended readers of the book, the time in the wilderness is comparable to the time between the destruction of the first and building the second temple, since there was no temple. So what are we trying to say with Amos? Okay, let's see how good you are. So the Babylonians destroyed the first temple. The Babylonians take the priests, they are sacristy and the rich to Bavel, and they're left with country bumpkin. And so they don't know anything. I mean, some do, some don't. They don't know anything. And so between the first, so that, I know the temple was destroyed in 586 BCE, maybe it was built between 525 and 530 BCE, but during those periods of time, those decades, they were uneducated. And so I want to say, I'm just pounding away of the importance of this. That those who engage in rituals have to be in good heart. There's no point to do Judaism if you're doing it faking the funk. It's disingenuous Judaism. That's the Jewish perspective. But for Christians, it's a good starting point to say if they're biblical prophets who are rebuking the Israelites, that gives us a precedent for what? That the Jews in the first century or the second century are moving forward, or with Augustine and with Bartholomew, Jerome, the church fathers, that because we rejected the Son, we follow under this category. I'm not mad I'm saying this. This is just the reality of the situation. They have to make that point. That since it was so obvious, and everything that we do lacks the covenant intentionality. Paul would have no problem if Jews who were engaged in Jewish halakha, Jewish law, while believed in Jesus. I mean, I could talk about contemporary modern Jewish movements who do the same thing, but that's another class. Questions so far? Yes?
What do we do in the last line of this? Let justice well as like our righteousness. That seems to me a social and political commentary, not simply about having the right heart.
So, remember who the you know something funny? All right. Remember I said how prophets are like a thorn in the side? I sent an email to the temple about the symphony coming back for Rosh Hashanah, for Yom Kippur. I called it the Birmingham Symphony. I said not to be a thorn in your side, but it's the Alabama Orchestra Symphony. And I'm like, I don't understand the difference between organ and symphony, but that's, you can explain to me later, okay? I think it is a political, I think there is frustration of idolatry, of a failed judicial system, and we go to the prophets to get us on the right path. All right, any more questions? I'm going to go to another slide. Okay. Oh, suffering servant. Okay, let's go to Isaiah 53. Isaiah is a big book, by the way. Okay. This is moving me with 53. Okay. I'm going to start reading it. I want to do 53. Is that okay? Okay. Who can believe what we heard, upon whom the arm of the Lord has been revealed? For he has grown by his favor, and that's a capital H, like a tree crown, like a tree trunk out of arid ground. They had really a great pen. He had no form or beauty that we should look at him, no charm that we should find him pleasing. He was despised, shunned by men, a man of suffering, familiar with disease, as one who hid his face from us. He was despised. We held him of no account. Yet he was our sickness, and he was our bearing, our suffering that he endured. We accounted him plagued, smitten and afflicted by God. But he was wounded because of our sins, crushed because of our iniquities. He was bruised like a sheep. Okay. Who suffered? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the famous line, yeah. That in, did you ever bring that up with pastor or reverend? I don't know. Reverend Long. Did you ever bring it up with your? Why not? There it is. Hold on. I just want to make sure. Oh, hold on. Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure Rachel didn't have a house key, so she should go to the temple to get the twins. Okay. I left the twins with an interesting person. Okay. I always when we do Torah study, I always say like there was a copy editor, things don't make sense, things just pop in, and you can assume there's multiple writers. Could there be multiple writers for Isaiah? I've never studied that before. So you're onto something. Bring it up to your clergy. Okay? Who else? Come on, guys. It's right here. Who sees Jesus? Oh, what do you mean, all Jew? It's not super. Okay. This is like a Christian supersession. Everyone like taught. Like, for those Christians who believe that Christians supersede, I got to tell you, it doesn't, when I say it doesn't bother me, it's like, I believe your Christians are entitled to a faith, and as long as you, okay, it bothers you, okay, I'm just, I just, I can sleep at night and I feel comfortable. It's kind of like Reform. I know. It's like Reform rabbis who feel inferior to like Orthodox rabbis. It's like, get over it, okay? They're not thinking about you. Who sees Christ again? Raise your hands. Who doesn't see Christ? Who doesn't know? Some people didn't raise their hand up. Those are my three options. Yeah? What does it say? Oh, yours, you got the Oxford? Servant is Israel. That's what it's called? Okay. What is your, okay, give me more biblical interpretations. You got the Oxford. That's the Okay. Messianic illusion. Okay. Okay. All right. Jeremiah, that he was going to be a bullfrog. Anyone else? What does yours say, Judge? Okay. Anyone have like the King James? New Life Bible? Only fun when you bring different commentaries. Okay, different. What does it say? What does it say about 53? Like the footnotes are. Okay. I'm going to read you what the Uden say, okay? And I'm beginning with, we'll go to 52 because you guys wanted to bring that up. The servant. One of the most difficult and contested passages in the Bible. It's like, thanks, that's helpful. Okay. These 15 verses have attracted an enormous amount of attention from ancient and medieval and modern scholars. In particular, the identity of the servant is vigorously debated. Many argue the servant symbolizes the entire Jewish people. So that's the Oxford. Israel is the Jewish people. Okay, let's go. Okay, Israel. Chazal is an acronym for the rabbis. Israel equals the nation. The nations suffer for the world's sins. Okay, I'm going to keep on going. You know what's fun? I didn't look at this. I just knew it from my heart. Okay, and I just like to see what I get surprised with myself. I'm telling you the truth. Okay. What does it say?
It says exactly what you just said.
It says chazal?
No, yeah, and it got into the same, it had the same line, heavily debated and probably.
Because I'm reading it from here. Oh, okay. He's reading from the Hebrew Study Bible. Okay. Okay. All right. The passage then describes the nation's unjust tribulations in the hands of the Babylonians and the later oppressors, as well as the nation's self-evident role in the world at large. Others maintain that the passage describes a pious minority within the Jewish people. This minority suffers as a result of the sins committed by the larger nation of Israel. Bolstering these interpretations is the fact that the term servant is Deutero-Isaiah, generally refers to the nation as a whole, or an idealized representation of the nation. Other scholars argue the servant in this passage is a specific individual. The Targum and various midrashim identified the servant as Moshiach, the anointed one. But this suggestion is unlikely, since nowhere else does Deutero-Isaiah refers to the Moshiach. And the absence of a belief in an individual Messiah is the one of the hallmarks of a Deutero-Isaiah outlook, okay? Because of marked similarities between language described in the servant and Jeremiah's, okay, Saadia Gaon, who's like one of the main medieval dudes, Saadia Gaon, argue the text refers to Mr. Bullfrog himself, while the Talmud records opinion that it describes Moses. Both opinions have been echoed by modern scholars. On the other hand, equally impressive parallels between the servant and first Isaiah can be observed in chapter 6. Okay. All right. They're now okay. Furthermore, many passages in Deutero-Isaiah view the prophet Jeremiah as a model for the nation, so without equating the nation of that prophet. Christians have argued that this passage, in fact, predicts the coming of Jesus. Medieval rabbinic commentators devoted considerable attention to refuting this interpretation. This passage is deeply elusive. Okay, 53. The identity of the speaker who expresses their shock at the career of a servant is unclear. Are they kings and nations? If so, then the servant is probably in the nation Israel, and the nations are stunned that such an insignificant and lowly group out turns have been so important to the divine plan. Alternatively, the speakers may be the Judeans themselves, in which the case the servant is either a pious minority, the ideal Israel in contrast to the mass Judeans, or some individual within the Israelite community. I'm reading from the Jewish Study Bible. So basically it says, it could be Jeremiah, it could be Moses, it could be the Judeans, it could be the Israelites. You're like, and yeah, by the way, during medieval times, a lot of rabbis, like Nachmanides, they would debate Christians, and they would come up into this proof text. Okay, well, tell me what verse you're at. I know who Christians are going to think it is. You know, I told you my favorite joke that every Jewish mother thinks their son is the Messiah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, how do you know Jesus was Jewish? Went to his father's business. Okay. Okay. I don't know. But the whole notion of Moshiach and Messianic redemption is way later. That's why when you had like the issue between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, that you guys remember, the Sadducees rejected any type of bodily resurrection because bodily resurrection isn't referenced at all in the 5 books of Moses. I mean, we talk about Samuel bringing back the witch of Endor. Using the witch of Endor to bring back Samuel. It's just a funky scene. Do you guys ever guys go to like the Brick Testament? You guys know what that is? It's like Legos acting out biblical stories. Pretty funny, okay, and how they do the witch of Endor scene. No, we don't get like idea of bodily resurrection. I think like Daniel 9 or 12. I can't remember, but it's way later. Not until the Greeks. Because life stinks. We're having socio and economic oppression. What do we do? And this is it. So I don't know. I mean, believe me, if it was Jesus, Um, Judaism will look entirely different right now. So, um, tell me more. I mean, this is a big one for you guys. Like, has a pastor ever used Isaiah 53 in a sermon that you could recall? Is it because you guys are too, like IPC, made up of a bunch of intellectuals and scholars that you're too rational? Like if I said this at like another like evangelical church, do you think they'd all put their hands in the air? Okay. But you, let's say Joel Osteen. Okay, I don't want to talk about any other evangelical church. Joel Osteen's church. Okay. Do you think that his church more than likely would raise their hands and say yes, it's Jesus? Okay, evangelicals. Okay. So in Christmas, you recite Isaiah 53 in part of the liturgy? You hear it. You sound like Maimonides, that God is unknowable. Yeah. Okay, what else do I have on this slide? Okay. All right. So after the Holocaust, you had the rise of post-Holocaust theology. Okay? And a lot of post-Holocaust theologians saw this. Now, I want to be careful for what I say. It wasn't a pretext to show, the mass murder of 6 million Jews, okay? Or if we want to go back earlier, the pogroms in Eastern Europe, the massacre at Kishinev, the subjugation of the enlightened world. The Crusades were horrible. I mean, the bubonic plague, we were blamed for that one. I mean, you'll see a substantial rise. You saw post-Holocaust theology. You'll see a substantial rise of October 7th theology. A lot of Jews today quite don't understand the significance of October 7th. It is the most defining period in Jewish history since the Holocaust. There's no question about it, okay? No question. No question about it. So you mean the Holocaust? Who's No, I mean, when it's written, whatever that theology looks like, because no theology has been written yet, no substantial theology that I have seen, because the situation has not been finalized yet. So, like no, happening, yeah, yeah, and
Probably this is something that Isaiah was written during the downfall after the That's what
so yeah, so and then so there's rabbis like Elchanan Wasserman, like deep Orthodox rabbis, who believe that the Holocaust needed to happen because of secular Jews. Okay, no, this guy's a guy who probably marched to his death, so I can't take away his experience. But yes, go ahead. You got a hand, the pen up, or your glasses. What are you gonna say? Yeah. Oh, so what I mean by like us suffering as a collective people is kind of like our common theme in Judaism that I think I talked about in Rosh Hashanah Day and Yom Kippur Day. But the fact that Jews are still here is a miracle itself. Perseverance. Miracle. I mean, we shouldn't be here. We've defied reason. I said, empires have come, they left, they're fragments, and those fragments are ironically in museums in Jerusalem. Okay? We're here. There's 16 to 20 million Jews in the world. There's over 1 billion Christians, over 1 billion Muslims, and 1 billion Hindus. Okay? We're 0.2% of the world's population. We're here. Yes? Sure. I think, yeah, Judaism without God is I talked about this in my Yom Kippur. It's about God and suffering, okay? But we see this suffering servant, that we are this suffering, perpetual suffering servant. And so after the Holocaust, when 6 million Jews are slaughtered, and the majority of those 6 million Jews, by the way, were I'll call them Orthodox Jews, it says, like, was this predicted in the book of Isaiah? So, of course, Holocaust education is going to read into this. And the idea of October 7th is that, let me back up. With the formation of the State of Israel and the establishment of the Haganah, the Irgun, the Jews that would take up arms and defend her land, that the Jews would know, if we're going to suffer, the only way we're going to suffer is that we're going to go down fighting in battle, that Davidic idea. That we're no longer just going to be helpless, wanderless sheep sent to the slaughterhouse. That's why, if you have a good tour guide in Israel, Yad Vashem is connected to Mount Herzl. So you have the story that talks about the sheep, and then the mountain, that's Arlington, it's the lions that fell in battle. October 7th completely destroys that narrative because you had Holocaust survivors burnt alive in the state of Israel. That's why the theology is going to, and you saw the world, the Western world, utterly collapse once more against the Jewish people. So the Jewish question is, are we still suffering? And tomorrow, next time, it's 10-2. We're going to get into Acts and the First Peter to talk about this. Final questions, because it's 10:50. It's 2 minutes. And I want you guys to get it to worship.